everyone, you're very welcome to our Scorebuddy webinar, Automating Your Contact Centre, Practical Ways to Make AI Work. Before we begin, you might like to have an idea of where our audience is joining in from. So we have a huge percentage from the UK and the US, and other locations include South Africa, Ireland, Canada, and all over the globe. Industry-wise, we have a lot joining from technology, FS and healthcare, also outsources, retail and other industries too. I'd love to introduce you to Derek from Scorebuddy, our founder and CEO, and Nerys Corfield, contact center consultant from Enablement Consulting. Hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Lara. Hello, Derek.
Hello, Nerys. Good afternoon and good morning to other people around the globe.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see how many people from different locations around the globe are joining. And I know that's always the case with your webinars in Scorebuddy, but I suppose everybody now it's a global thing, AI. Globe is talking about it, but everybody's coming at it from very different perspectives, right?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So it's sort of exploded. I mean, I think everybody on the call is going to know that before 12 months ago or even less, nobody was talking about OpenAI, ChatGPT. Nobody knew who Claude was other than a guy who lived in France. AI was really, it was a highly technical, highly engineering-led proposition for most organizations. If they were thinking about it from an operational point of view, you had to go talk to some fairly pointy-headed guys to get it deployed and functioning in an effective way in organizations. It was more of an IT project, really, and I think what's happened recently and what's just remarkable in terms of I think it's the fastest adoption of any technology broadly in the history of technology. So it's just been wholesalely adopted, and it's down to this release, if you like, of access to these large language models, these LLMs, in various guises, which people can just interact with and play with, and they're suddenly imagining how they can apply it in their business. Or in their personal lives, their personal professional lives, So it's an exciting time. It's transformative. With that comes challenges and risk, but a really exciting time for our industry.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I think that's right, isn't it? It's now we're in the year of sort of implementation now. We had this, last year was all about the reality of what generative AI might be able to do. And I suppose this webinar is all about trying to cut through the very loud noise that exists about AI across the world and boil it down into very practical applications that resonate within the contact center customer services environment. Because if you think that Neuralink put a brain chip into the 29-year-old paraplegic last week, and he can now telematically play chess. If you think about what's happening in Sora, and that you can now, somebody just decided actually in Hollywood they weren't going to open their projected £870 million studio because Sora, where you can do a text prompt and create video, is demonstrating that actually films are going to change. Everything, like you say, Derek, is very, very transformative. But it's really about thinking about what's happening in contact centres. And I suppose in my 26 years of working across hundreds of different contact centres in lots of different shapes and sizes, either working in them or working with them, this is bigger than like Y2K. Remember when that happened and everybody was really nervous back in the late 90s, obviously. This is absolutely massive, but it is about thinking about what are the practical applications. So I suppose that leads us on to our very first poll to really understand where this really wide geographical and vertical audience are sitting on their AI journey, just to give us a sense of what that might look like. So I'm going to ask Lara to initially just set up a poll so we can understand what stage are you at in adopting AI. Are you fully implemented? a Gen AI solution in any sort of use case? Have you fully, are you currently piloting that AI technology, planning to do it, considering but haven't taken any steps yet, or have absolutely no plans for AI integration in the near future? So we can see that we're at sort of 30%. Where do you think it's going to land? We can get a sense of where it's going to land, but what's your view in your experience
Yeah,
where people are?
I think there's a huge amount of research and thought going on at the moment in meeting rooms and in team meetings all over the globe. I think people are looking at pilot projects and thinking, okay, where should I start, right? What skills do I need to make this work? Who should I talk to as a support vendor?
Yeah,
So I'd be surprised if there are too many fully implemented Gen AI solutions. I think there are
yes,
probably pre-Gen AI solutions which have already
yeah,
been deployed and are stable and functioning. But I'm not aware of too many of our customers who have rolled out fully implemented Gen AI type propositions, right? But everybody is interested in finding out where to start and how to make it work. Yeah.
yes, definitely. And we're getting a really good sense of where the audience are on their journey at the moment. And unsurprisingly, we are very much in that nascent stage where we're thinking about AI adoption and what it might do to our customer experience and our advisor experience, planning for that or currently piloting it. And I suppose, as I say, I've been judging technology and AI implementation. So I have seen fully implemented AI solutions, which have been really exciting to see certainly the value that they're bringing to those organizations. But mostly people are in these early stages of thinking about what Gen AI is going to be able to do. Yeah, so that's where we've landed, and that's sort of where you thought we would land, Eric. Any other comments on that?
No, I mean it doesn't surprise me. I think lots of pilots going on, lots of interesting examples of how not to do it emerging every so often on social media, etc. We could touch off of just case studies that will serve as a warning in terms of which pilots you choose and that decision to expose your customers to trust them to interact with a Gen AI bot or environment. So, look, we can talk a little bit more about that and illustrate that with some case studies. But yeah, not that surprised with where we landed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, those people that have really rushed to the gold rush that they have seen of Gen AI and done so without that due consideration. And like you say, there's lots of high profile case studies across the world that say you cannot expose generative AI without guardrails to customers. It's a mathematical algorithm at the end of the day. The patterns are just going, what's the next word? It has no context. It has no understanding. It is supremely brilliant at doing the things that it does, but it shouldn't, on its own, without being complemented by another AI solution, it shouldn't be exposed to customers. And we've seen obviously horrible examples where those layers of intelligent prompt management and or complementary AI have meant that they've ended up those poor brands have ended up front and center on the news headlines and created a reluctancy because we've all experienced bad intent-based bots, right? So we don't want to think, oh, actually, well, I'm going to get sued if I, put an LLM, put Gen AI in. So they don't serve the market very well. So get on the naughty step, all of those brands that have just rushed without due consideration to put a generative AI chatbot out onto exposing their customers. But let's think about how you do leverage AI in a beautiful way. So that brings us on to our sort of first topic, Derek, around meeting those growing interaction volumes. Are you seeing customers talking to you?
Yeah, I think when we were prepping for this earlier in the week, Nerys, we were talking about AI and how it's evolved over time, and you were talking about the fact that I think research started on AI back in 1956. So it's taken us a good old while to get to this point. And what predated generative AI was machine learning and natural language processing. And they're well understood and well deployed technologies. And I know you've come across some really good use cases and projects where they were very successful. What we need to understand about generative AI is it's not generating new knowledge. It's not creating new knowledge. What it's doing is transforming existing knowledge and serving that up in a very humanistic, conversational, interactive way, and in a very plausible way. So when we've experimented with LLMs and asked them questions that we would in a normal operational contact center, obviously our sweet spot is quality assessment, so that's the area we're interested in. But it has other applications, and it gives very plausible answers, which look very, very believable. But then you ask the same question through a human evaluator, and you just don't get the same outcomes. So there's definitely some flags there and some risk in terms of how we apply it and how we understand how to interact with the technology. And that's part of our job as a vendor, is to try and work that out on behalf of our customer base, and then go, okay, here's the best way to apply it, right? So I think Gen AI it absolutely promises so much, okay? Yeah. And the areas where we're seeing it, I suppose where the rubber is hitting the road, is definitely in the area of call deflection, okay? So looking at intelligent bots, and we've all interacted with chatbots, and in fact some of us have deployed chatbots, where they're tree and branch structures. You can almost do away with the tree and branch structure in this new world, but you're still reliant on data to serve the bot that maybe lives in different parts of your business. So imagine somebody interacting with a bot in an insurance company and looking for a refund. Well, what's our refund policy? How does the bot know what the refund policy is? Well, it's over there in a folder on John's desk. So it's thinking through the support knowledge that the bot needs in order to serve up the right answer, the right outcome for the customer, and the right experience for the customer. And that in itself is a challenge. It's an IT challenge. It's a data silo challenge, if you like. And it's a design challenge in terms of how you design that front end. So I think that's probably where a lot of pilot projects will kick off. I think, and we'll talk about risks later on, but I mean, you're going to need some guardrails around that. We're also seeing projects where agent assist, so real-time assistant for agents, so knowledge support, where it's dynamically serving up again. It's serving up knowledge in a very intelligent and humanistic way as a co-pilot, a support to an agent while they are in the interaction. And again, I know, Nerys, you've worked with some projects where you've got really, really good results using that sort of.
That's my favorite thing, I think, about generative AI, is that its ability to really support the advisors, because, it's really tough in some environments, and it's really tough being an advisor when you just can't answer the customer's question, either on the digital channel or on the voice channel. It's much more exposing and feels much more uncomfortable on the voice channel. So having that real time, that agent assistant there is really incredible. But to your absolute point around, practical, this is the catalyst for businesses to recognize that their data silos are a problem, the gaps in their data are a problem, the lack of focus and attention on that sort of consistent knowledge management. So what you're serving up in your digital channels on your website to what you're then presenting to your advisors. There's always been a bit of a disconnect going on there, but now you're asking a single resource to present that answer, irrespective of whichever channel. And for some reason, that is now shining a light on the fact that data and getting that data in one place with a single customer view, because channel shift is always front and center of most discussions that I have with contact centers. However, there is this recognition that voice is valid, voice is important, and it is about sort of apt channel management. So it's thinking about the type of interaction, the type of customer, and then equating it to the right channel. So being able to bring those things together. And again, generative AI, because it shines a light on your data and therefore your customers and their customer journeys and their preferences in a much better way than all the data science that has gone before, in honesty. It means that you can anticipate, you can analyze much more effectively with AI, and therefore you can much more elegantly serve customers the right channel at the right time for their needs. So it is all about getting that grounding of data and making sure that you've got the right people with their eyes on, saying, if this bot is going to be looking into this and responding to it and serving and supporting the advisor community, who are subsequently serving and supporting the customers, is the data right? So yeah, from that point of view, that's a hallelujah moment in contact centers, because it's always been a horrible pain point. So that data strategy is first on everybody's to-do list, really.
I love the story about the airline chatbot that was, the call was coming through to a live agent afterwards, and they're saying, the other guy just gave me a discount, right? So I want to collect that now. Right? So, as we started thinking about, in the QA world, so, we're in the process of adding an automation layer to the evaluation process and trying to weave the LLM proposition into that equation, right? And the first thing that we discovered, and to your point on data, is that the knowledge base that it needs just to support the evaluators, the institutional knowledge that lives in our operational managers and evaluators, it's not always written down, right? It's learned, it's acquired, so, and then we started thinking about, well, okay, what about our own knowledge base? If we make the knowledge base available to the LLM, what does that look like, right? And then you extend that logic and you say, well, okay, hang on, somebody has to administer that knowledge base. Yeah. So is every article in that knowledge base the most recent version of our policy on airline refunds or on whatever it may be, whatever the topic is? So I think there are a number of new skills and operational administrative layers, if you like, that are going to come into play now to try and bridge that gap, right? And as I say, the danger with LLMs is it will give you a very plausible answer. So if we ask the LLM about a conversation between an agent and a customer, did the agent display sufficient product knowledge? The LLM will give us an answer, but it doesn't know what good product knowledge looks like unless we tell it, right?
Exactly.
It's that disconnect, right? Which isn't always visible, and that's the problem. The LLM will give a plausible answer, but unless you dig down, you won't know whether it's an accurate answer or not.
No, they're beautiful psychopaths because they pretend to have emotion and human emotion, and they convince you that they can have empathy, and then they also lie beautifully and so convincingly. And that Air Canada example is a classic, where actually the lawyers in that case, as you'll know, tried to say that the bot was its own entity and therefore they shouldn't sue them because they weren't at fault. But yeah, it was a small claim, $800, I think it was, but ultimately everybody is talking about it and asking, searching about, well, of course it's your responsibility about how your bot presents itself. But yeah, I've certainly worked with knowledge asset managers in teams who are assuring that knowledge is as up to date as possible, that sometimes sit within the training team, sometimes sit within the digital team. But that is absolutely vital and key that you've got those humans in the loop doing those checks and balances, irrespective of if you're using your generative AI to do auto QM and that you're overlaying humans to deliver that assurity, or you're doing it for emails, summarization with emails, or that you're understanding how it's presenting knowledge assets and support to advisors. There has to be those checks and balances in place. Yes.
One of the things we've discovered within our customer base, and these are customers who have deployed and invested heavily in call deflection schemes and projects using interactive bots, right? And the intelligence of those bots is increasing. But even in the sweet spot cases, they were getting up to 60% call deflection. Now I know it was within a very good fit environment, but that's very substantial. So one of the things that we saw happen with that process was that same customer in the gaming industry actually treats the bot as another team of agents, right?
Yes.
And what they're doing is they're taking the conversations from that bot, they're sampling in exactly the same way as they would live conversations with agents, and they're evaluating them and applying the same criteria that they would to a customer experience outcome for a live agent call. So we're seeing bots now as a data source for QA, for quality analysis. And that is one mechanism that provides oversight and governance and audit, if you like, to make sure the bot doesn't veer off in the wrong direction, or that it isn't doing brand damage, which is always the worst fear.
And how are you seeing the advisor community adopt and feel towards that process now being put into QM?
I think it's interesting. I mean, we talk about this all the time, and during customer events, we ask questions and we probe, and during direct customer interactions, and it's a topic on top of everybody's list, right? But it's a general topic. It's what can AI do for me, rather than more specific. So we're trying to help with that conversation by saying, well, look, these are the areas you could look at, right? These are the quick wins. This is where to make an economic difference without the general risks of a very large project. And it's trying to point them in that direction. I think there's a degree of concern and uncertainty, definitely. Gartner is talking about significant downward pressure on agent numbers. What does that look like? We don't know. Is it 10%? Is it 20%? Is it 50%? We don't know, right?
No, we don't know.
Interaction numbers are still climbing all the time, so there's more interactions, not less. And what we're finding is, and expecting, is that for the calls that do get through to agents, the complexity of those calls and the demands on the agent are going to be much more complex, require emotional skills, soft skills, so average call duration, for instance, is likely to lengthen rather than shorten in this new world.
Oh, well, it has significantly increased in the last couple of years. I mean, when you go into a contact center and their AHT is around 3 minutes, you think there's a lot of interactions here that are high volume, low value, probably, because they're being managed on the voice channel. So that demonstrates that there is opportunity potentially to channel shift appropriately onto digital channels and or self-service channels. But I suppose the brutal reality is we are going to see advisor numbers go down. We've already seen big cases like Klarna, who have replaced 700 FTE with their deployment of generative AI on the digital channels. And that was a very specific use case. That was where's my order. But there are, it is all of these things are about doing things more efficiently and more effectively. Now, for the advisor community, that's a really positive thing in so much as they can be supported and they can have contacts presented to them that they are much better able to service. But at a broader level, interaction volumes that advisor resources are required for will go down. Now it's going to be whether it's going to be 20%, 30% or 50% and how quickly that happens. And, I work with some organizations that have made a very human policy and said, we want to keep our numbers the same because it's a very sensitive topic to navigate. And, there's a real macro, you look at the laws being put in place in India now around AI, obviously everybody's got their own laws coming in. The EU AI law is the first to come to market and is pretty strict. In the UK, it's completely contrasting, what they're doing on the AI front side of things, completely in contrast to the EU, which makes it very difficult across the board. But then India are like, if this is taking jobs, this is a problem. And therefore they're putting measures in and laws in to ensure that that doesn't happen. So there's an awful lot of factors that are coming into play. But for those entities that are really focused on driving the highest level efficiencies, driving as much interactions into the digital channel, then inevitably there will be a net reduction in advisor numbers.
And Nerys, have you thought about what sort of new skill sets, the operational management teams within contact centers are going to need to adopt or acquire in this brave new world?
Yeah, I think the support teams are the ones that are being repurposed first and foremost. So let's talk about the quality managers and or the team leaders that are sometimes wholly responsible for doing the quality scorecarding. I think they're in a lovely position and again are being enabled to support the advisors much more effectively because QM is such a vital part of a contact centre's rhythm, and certainly that interaction with advisors and ensuring that everybody's at that top tier of delivering quality to the customer expectations within that organisation. But it's pretty administratively heavy. So again, I work with organisations where the QMs are spending, or the team leaders spending 80% of their time doing QM. Now, in terms of repurposing their role, they're all going to have the opportunity to say, I'm spending 80% of my time coaching and spending time with my guys, understanding how to better support them and make them feel happier in their jobs, because we all know attrition's a problem as well in the industry. So I think that's a really exciting part. And resource planners exactly the same, they're working on algorithms. That's luckily Gen AI isn't math. It doesn't work with numbers, but fundamentally we can see that is going to change as well. So all of the things that they can then lend their hand to and better support the overall business objectives, I think that's happening quite a bit. They're becoming much more aligned with the FDs, for example. So that's quite interesting seeing that change. Okay. And then, like you said earlier, the advisor community is just, becoming much more focused on being that human connection.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think different brands are going to take different, are going to have different attitudes to that, white glove service, for instance. Also, it'll be interesting to see how us as consumers, interacting with brands, are we going to be happy just to talk to chatbots all the time? Is that, will that satisfy our needs? I suppose increasingly it will. But when it gets tricky, and I've had my flight cancelled or my hotel wasn't up to scratch or whatever it may be, the bigger ticket items in our daily lives, we probably will need an advisor to help us through that at some point. You would think.
Yes. I always think about it is that the voice channel is always going to be needed for comfort, clarity, and crisis. Yeah. And those are the 3 C's that the voice channel will always be needed for. And like you say, there's always that human need. And will it become normalized? Because at the moment there's a bit of wow when you go on to GPT-4 and ask it questions. But is that gonna become normalized? Are we going to be able to anthropomorphize our bot experiences as brands and have an Alexa-like relationship? I mean, I love Alexa. She doesn't love me. I asked her the other day, but it's there's a lot to think about. But in the QM side of things, just quickly coming back to that, Derek, before we go on to our next poll with the audience, I think there's a really interesting point that you made about that Air Canada experience, where the agent was very quick to blame the bot, because it hadn't been, that bot was a different entity to them. Now, there are some great work being done by brands where they're recognizing, like you say, that they are a component part of the contact center operation and should be treated with like this clarity of understanding of that, what's their role, how are they doing it, what is the process that the QM bot is undertaking, and what are we going to call that QM bot, so the advisors feel more engaged and understanding of these scores that are just coming, that are being, you know, spat out from the auto QM, and then how is the human going to sort of surround that with their skills and experience, because I think
And
that's
again,
probably,
you know,
yeah,
one of the risks we've identified is specifically that, and we've taken a view that we will entirely separate the outcomes from automated evaluations from human
right,
evaluations. So they're not going to live in the same reports, they're not going to live in the same space generally, right? There'll be very
yeah,
clear distinction between them. Because number one, I think there's ethical and HR sort of considerations in terms of automating performance measurement for individuals, right? So, and I think that may well be reflected in law at some point. But it's also to
yeah,
avoid a disengagement effect, literally what you described there, that if the agents don't trust the environment, don't trust the outcomes, they will become disenchanted and, you know, will not engage with the quality and performance process, and that's a big no-no. So we're really trying to guard against that, and keep it as in a separate silo, if you like, right? The other thing is that, and we touched off this, just the nature of LLMs and the skills that you need to ask the right question. So I was reading an article recently, and this guy was, you know, he was benchmarking ChatGPT with Claude 3, right? And it was very simple. On a personal basis, he's saying, I want a training plan to run a half marathon in June. And that was his first question to both. And they both gave general training programs, right? And then he said, but, you know, there was no context. So he said, well, actually, I'm a 45-year-old man. I weigh, you know, 120 kilos, and I'm diabetic. Now what does my training plan look like? So, you know, it's adding that context is really, really important. And that's what, you know, is generally referred to as prompt engineering or context setting, right?
yeah,
And prompt engineering, you know, you'll see loads of courses on, you know, chargeable courses coming at you. Everybody needs to know to be a prompt engineer, apparently. We certainly need to know how to ask the right question, provide
yeah,
context for the question, and then ask
yeah,
for the answer in the right way. And I think that's a skill that, you know, certainly within the QM community, they're going to have to learn that skill if auto scoring is going to become a reality. Because if you
yeah,
just take scorecards and QA cards that would normally be applied in operational, you know, normal environments, again back to that question: did the agent demonstrate product knowledge? Yeah, they allow them to tell you yes or no, but it won't be right. So I think there's a whole new skill set there, which again, as vendors, we need to help with that learning curve, right? We need to provide the information and the training for that, but it's going to be a very significant factor in the quality of the outcomes, right? Or the
yes, prompt
rather the
engineering, asking
accuracy
the
of
right
the
questions,
outcomes.
yes.
Okay, so
Derek, can I ask you now, because I was just thinking, actually, we've got a poll, and then we're going to go on and to discuss sort of some more practical applications and the future, what's 2024 and beyond going to bring. But because we're talking about that QM side of things, I wondered, could we have a quick video demo of your
yeah, I can talk you through
solution?
something that we put together just to illustrate some of the points we're making, right? It's very short,
Okay,
guys.
it's a
So
couple of
thank you.
minutes, is it?
Oh,
Yeah.
it's I think it's even shorter. Yeah. So look, you know, this is the sort of entry point for QM evaluators, right? So, you know, in the Scorebuddy world, we have the scorecard here, which has been designed up, and it's, you know, most of you would recognize that. And we have a new tab here, which is the AI assist piece, right? And what it's really doing is it's taking the conversation between the agent and the customer, and it's throwing that into, in this case, OpenAI or ChatGPT, and it's bringing back a summary of that call. and it's got 7 or 8 attributes which are pre-programmed, which it will score against, right? But they're generic attributes: tone of voice, empathy, outcome, customer sentiment, right? Things that we think LLMs are sort of out of the box good at and don't need a lot of tuning for, okay?
Yes.
So it's an assistant. It's not going to answer the questions for you. It'll give you more context, richer context in the process of evaluating, okay? And that's a sort of a starting point. Our next phase, though, is where we effectively turn every question in the scorecard into a prompt, okay? And allow our customers then to craft specific scorecards or specific questions which will use the AI engine, right? And so at that point, you're auto scoring, right? But it is in the hands of the customer as to the quality of those scorecards, and that's why I'm really pointing to this need to understand how to get the best out of the LLM and how to provide content for the answers, right? And then you're into the whole, well, is there a knowledge base that needs to support that scorecard or that question or that compliance issue or whatever it may be, and that just opens up the whole data conversation. So I think, just leading into what's happening next, I think there's going to be an experimental phase with our clients and with broadly with our sector and with customer experience managers, seeing how can I apply this to get economic efficiencies within my operations. And I think the starting point will probably be virtual agents, and we're working with some technology partners in that space. Definitely agent assist, as you've pointed out, Nerys, there's some quick wins there. Call summaries and post wrap, reducing those timelines. And auto scoring is down the road, I would say. It's coming, but it's not there yet, and we haven't quite found the edges, right? So I think there's still risk that we need to eliminate.
Oh, great. Yeah, I mean, it's just such a, if you think that most reports will tell you that the quality of customer experience is being perceived or is actually on a downward curve, both when you get to the point of interaction, either via voice or via digital, and just generally our average speed of answer is really going the wrong way. All of it, when the interaction is happening, is down to the quality, and your only measure has always been those 5% of interactions, one call, 4 calls per agent per month plus 2 digital. I mean, it's tiny. It's in a minutiae representation. So I think this is where generative AI is really exciting, both in its ability to surmise everything and anything, because these are big interactions happening and a whole corpus of data. So it's being able to sort of summarize that and just open your eyes to what's happening at a quality level, and then at a sort of customer experience level. So thank you for that. Should we do our sorry?
No, I was going to say you're spot on there. It's a coverage thing, and I am absolutely sure we'll find some sweet spot use cases where it works really, really well, and then there'll be lots of other areas where it works really badly, right? So it's really just to set that expectation.
Yeah, and I think at a practical level as well, it's really important to bring the advisor community as a super user representative, team leader representative. This isn't an IT project. This is going to touch human experiences. It could, I've done enough QMs that have really annoyed agents to advise. I've done them badly in my time to know how disenchanting and engaging that can be. It's like, where you got, you seem to be leaving. Oh dear. That didn't go very well. Important it is to make sure that they're on the journey with you. So should we go on to our next poll, which is about foreseeing AI automation tools and what impact you see as an audience, what impact you see them having within your contact center environment, and specifically on the roles of advisors and managers. So do you see it as a really reduction in mundane tasks? What do they say about AI? If it's dirty, dangerous, or boring, get a bot to do it. Increased efficiencies. Where's this one going to land? I love the fact that we can see it all moving around. Where do you
Real
think
time.
it's? What do you think? Increased efficiencies and productivities. Interesting. I think we're pretty much. Oh, we've still got a few more coming in. I mean, the reality is there's probably a couple of the above and all of the above. If we can just leave that up there for a second, Lara, so we can just talk through some of these use cases specifically. So it looks like the biggest impact that people are looking to see is increased efficiency and productivity. We talked about auto summarization of contacts, and I think that is a really practical, almost table stakes use case now. So a lot of the vendors, across the piece can offer that auto summarization of email and or voice. And I'm a massive fan of that. I'm a massive fan of that for lots of different reasons, because anyone in a contact center will know that, yes, we love having that transactional information present itself so we can understand the customer's experience. AI will give you a much cleaner view as to, is this a happy customer, a sad customer? Are they calling for the 8th time or interacting with the 8th time on the same problem? So it'll give us a much cleaner view of where that customer is as it presents, but it will also give all that historic transaction detail. And if you've sat by as many advisors as I have over the in hundreds of contact centers, you sometimes look at those summarizations that have been manually keyed in and you think, what does that mean? They use short code, this cohort over here who've been trained by this trainer, they'll all use their different short code. Some of them will be really verbose in the way that they represent what's happened on that call because they're quick at typing or they're super diligent. Others will be like, call to ask a question. It's like, what? So having auto summarization, which creates this consistency of experience and this consistency of data capture, which then can help the analytics engine determine intents, which can then drive this more elegant channel shift initiative. That is great, isn't it? And that's where I think the biggest efficiencies and productivity gains are going to come from.
Yeah, that's agreed. And then LLMs are particularly good at summarization. It's a real quick win if you can get that deployed. Yeah, and again, those would all be the headline items and areas we would be looking at to see where can we introduce automation to improve efficiency and productivity. I think again, releasing experienced advisors to focus on complex tasks. Yeah, absolutely. I think that will happen as a natural consequence of releasing the resources to be available to do that. But it also puts pressure on your coaching and your learning and development teams to sort of bring those agents up a notch, right? I think data is interesting, right? You're not relying necessarily on the generative AI to generate data because it's hard data that you're working with. But there are, we're working with one company where they have, the proposition is that in the same way that you use text to ask questions of an LLM, you would ask questions of your BI tool and say, will you find me a correlation between demographic and subscription cancellations, and cross-reference that with age group and location and build me a dashboard. And it will be literally typing that into your BI and it will generate that dashboard automatically. So there are certainly those sort of use cases within the data analytics side of it, which is going to make the data much more accessible without having to be a data analyst, essentially.
Yes. Well, I just wonder whether Excel spreadsheets will my son be like, what's an Excel spreadsheet? I mean, imagine that we move into that world, because, I never go into a contact center where there isn't a sneaky Excel spreadsheet somewhere, or there's a whole raft of them everywhere. So maybe that use case says, actually, we're going to just be without Excel spreadsheets. Interesting. So we've not got long left, Eric. So thoughts on future trends as we see the evolution of AI and more use cases and more value coming to the fore?
I think in support of each of the automation elements we talked about. So we talked about virtual agents handling,
Yeah,
deflecting calls or substantially handling calls through to completion. We talked about Agent Assist, which is dynamic knowledge support systems, and we're talking about auto QA, where we're automatically evaluating for quality for the key criteria, business process, customer needs, and soft skills, whatever the headlines may be. And each of those are going to expose what we've already described, the data gap. Okay. And the question is, okay, the LLMs that we have access to now, there's 5 or 6 of them, which cost billions to develop, years of training,
yeah,
petabytes of data to train them, right? So the average insurance company, bank, airline is not going to be engaged to that level of training
no,
and customizing the LLM to understand their business and their institution and their policies. However, there's a concept called fine tuning, which is now just being released by OpenAI. And
yeah,
the idea is that you feed information into the LLM and it uses that information just for you, not for anybody
yes.
else, right?
On the edge, in
Um,
the edge.
you're not training it, but you're almost caching information and making it available to it so that it is more likely to give you the right answer for your institution or organization. So that I think is one aspect. Extending that logic, there will be training propositions where you can actually own or purchase your own LLM and train it much more extensively on your data sets. And again, there's different skill sets required to do that, but it is going to become more accessible because there will be tools that will emerge to allow us to do that. So I think rather than using general LLMs, which are giving partially accurate responses, we'll start customization and then custom training as part of the proposition. And that will deliver
Yeah.
much higher accuracy rates.
Yes, yes, it's definitely going to continue to improve. You think about the CEO of Nvidia, the CEO of JP Morgan, Elon Musk himself, obviously, Sam Altman, they're all talking about AGI now and that coming in a year's time. So that's a really scary concept, and we definitely don't want to think about that. But I think, yes, this balance of large language models and then coming into grounded data sources, so using those principles of generative AI, but then passing through with an R is probably the reality. We are going to reach an impasse. There's not enough compute in the world at the moment. So Sam Altman's just asked for 7 trillion to get him the compute power that he needs to deliver Open API going forward. Yeah, there's a lot to think about, isn't there, at a broader level? But I think bringing it and boiling it back down, I think from my perspective, the future to everyone on this webinar is in your hands. And that sounds very corny, but my reality with working with so many different businesses is you have to be clear on your vision. You have to be clear on the vision that you want for your customer experience and your agent experience and work back from there. Because now what you can be assured of is that there is the technology and there are people and businesses that can help you on that journey. But you've got to define your sort of end point in order to then determine the milestones required to get there. So end point first, data strategy next, and then everything in between will sort of fall into place. But I think we're almost out of time, aren't we?
Yeah, look, and I suppose to summarize, everything you said, Nerys, I totally agree with. I think just be aware of the risks of doing it badly, right? So inform yourself. Pick a nice, easy use case to start with, and where it's a really good fit, and find out what that looks like in your world, and experiment and learn from that process. Do think about what skills you're going to need in your organization within the contact center space specifically, because you don't want to be reliant on third parties or other groups within your organization on the IT side, for instance, because it's a very dynamic environment. So I think our structures are going to change. I think there's going to be some new job titles in there that we haven't thought of yet, but they're going to live within the contact center operational environment. And it's a journey. So vendors like us, we'll be going on that journey with you, but there's an internal journey you go on as well.
And I haven't come across an ROI manager yet, but they're usually called FDs. But I reckon there'll be ROI managers popping up soon because, of course, whether it's time, effort, there is going to be an investment. And I know some businesses really struggle to get, because it is an operational experience generally. They struggle to get the buy-in and those hard ROIs. So I think there is going to be some requirements to help people round out those ROIs and think about those, whether they're hard, tangible ROIs or soft. I think that's part of it as well, Derek, isn't it?
Yeah, I just wonder, are there any questions from the audience that might like to address?
Yeah, we have one question. Every AI company I've spoken to says that AI should enhance quality audits, not replace them. Is this what you've experienced? Where do you see efficiencies in audits?
Yeah, I mean, it's back to my point earlier. I think they will enhance the promise is that it'll give you 100% or very high coverage rates in terms of the conversations that you're analyzing. The downside is accuracy and maintaining accuracy. So hence to my point, we will be keeping those outcomes separate to the human evaluations, so that it's clear the source of the evaluation, and it's also to protect the agent, I think. So it's a good point. I think it will be an enhancement. It'll give coverage. It'll answer some questions really, really well, and it'll be really bad at answering some other questions. And we're not sure where that dividing line is. I think for each organization, that dividing line is going to be in a different place.
So I think we're all wrapped up, everyone. So thank you very much for joining. Thanks to Derek and Nerys, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Derek.